Science and the Yom Haatzmut program. And we have a wonderful speaker tonight, Moshe Markowitz. It's also a great pleasure to welcome Rabbi Schoenfeld to our show. It's great to see you, and everybody else who's here. And so at this time, I would like to give the microphone over to Moshe Markowitz, who will be speaking on the topic of witnessing the birth of the State of Israel.
Thank you very much. Everybody who starts speaking to a group that is unfamiliar to him is looking for a segue or looking for some kind of connecting words. Well, somebody who was sitting next to me before gave me the bridge. There was a woman sitting next to me, and another woman said to her, "Are you staying for the presentation?" And she said, "No, I know all about it." So, with that introduction, let me guarantee you that you probably do know all about it, and I will not be presumptuous to start telling you all about the birth of the State of Israel. In my conversation with Rabbi Rosenberg, we agreed that what I will try to do tonight is actually convey to you or share with you the ambiance, the feelings, the mood of what transpired of Tel Aviv, and I assume beyond Tel Aviv, but I can only talk about Tel Aviv, during 1948 when the State of Israel was proclaimed. And so, don't look for too many facts. My hope is that I will be able to sort of embrace you or bring you within an experience of the birth of the State of Israel. So, thank you for coming, and thank you for inviting me. The stories that I will tell you are personal, but I believe that the only real way to convey them is through 3 psukim in Tehillim, and they really bring the whole experience together. They are from Tehillim 126 and the Perush of the Ibn Ezra on these 3 psukim. The psukim are Shir HaMa'alot, Beshuv Hashem et Shivat Zion, Hayinu Kecholmin. Az yimale schok binu uleshonenu rina, az yomru bagoyim, higdil Hashem la'asot imele, higdil Hashem la'asot imanu, hayinu smechim. Do I need to translate?
Always helps. Yeah.
Always helps. Okay, a song of ascents. When Hashem returns the returnees to Zion, we shall be like dreamers. At that time, our mouths will be filled with laughter and our tongues with songs of praise. Then it will be said amongst the nations, God has done great things with these people. Indeed, God has done great things with us. We shall be happy beyond, happy, joyous, and elated. It was a dream. Everyone says it, and it's trite, that for 2,000 years we dreamed about coming back to Yerushalayim. And finally, through a miracle, just like David HaMelech says, we have returned. We have returned, and the Ibn Ezra says that because of these miracles, because of the return to Zion, Ein Adam ro'eh behakitz hapele hazeh ela bechalom. You can't possibly attribute it to anything that is mundane and everyday, an experience that you see when you are awake. It has to be a dream. And it was a dream. And I would like to share a dream and you will see my perspective on it in a little while. Please realize, Israel was given to the state of Israel, the land was given to the state of Israel through the United Nations, and it was transferred from a mandate under the British to the leadership of the Zionist movement. The mandate, the British mandate, was initially a day of joy. I want to show you something that I'm sure you have not seen. By the way, I'll be doing on time. I don't know since we started late. Okay. I want to show you something that I'm sure you have not seen. There was a poster issued, Lichvodo shel Yom HaShichrur. The rabbis, the Vaad Ha'ir HaAshkenazi, the Ashkenazic Vaad of Yerushalayim, announced to all our brethren, the nation of God, to please honor the 5th day of the week, the 24th day of Kislev, a year since Yerushalayim was conquered from the Turks. Hayom hazeh mechubad yeh bechol kihilot Yisrael. Let it be honored in all the synagogues of Israel. Ubechol batei hamidrashim. Lehodot laHashem al hageula v'hayeshua. All of a sudden, it becomes a day of Thanksgiving. Do you know what year it was? 1917 became a day that we were liberated. The British took over. We are no longer under the Turks. So can you imagine, those of you who have heard about the tzavas under the British, what it must have been like to be under the Turks? And they're going to be davening and saying Tfilah hanoten tshua lichvod melech Britania hagdola, a prayer for the King of Britain, George HaChamishi Yichyeh. Everything is here. Ubirkat Misha Berach, an additional Misha Berach in 1917 in the month of Kislev, to whom? Lesar Tzva'o HaGeneral Allenby, the Messiah. Allenby saved us from the Turks. I will not continue with this note because it has a few more lines. But if we take that perspective and keep it in mind and realize that here was another dream of freedom, of liberation, that did not materialize, that ultimately everybody rebelled and everybody complained and everybody, I would even use the word cursed the British for what they have been doing to the Jews in Europe, and those who were trying to come to Israel. The dream, poof, disappeared. So, as we are getting closer and closer to 1948, please realize that we are dealing with just another step in a process of dreams. Let me stop that little historical note and tell you a little bit of a romantic story. And the romantic story is about a man and a woman. The man arrived in Israel in 1933. The woman arrived in Israel in 1935. He arrived without the permission of his parents. She arrived with a mother and 4 siblings. And they met in 1940. She arrived in 35, he arrived in 33, and they met in a club for these immigrant young people in 1940. I assume that this debonair gentleman from a Czech-Hungarian background and this very pretty Polish woman must have fallen in love because they decided to date. And they dated much longer than they do in Lakewood, They dated for 4 years. And finally, in 1945, when they finally had a few, I don't know what the currency, I guess it was the British currency, in their pocket, they decided to go to Vad HaKeilah, which is the Rabbinical Council in Tel Aviv, and get married. A year later, guess what? A baby boy. And the baby boy has a birth certificate. This is a birth certificate from June 14th, 1945. It is issued by the British Mandate of Palestine, the Department of Health, Certificate of Registration of Birth, Government of Palestine. The name of the boy, 8 days later, was Moshe Markowitz. It's me. If you want to know how much I weighed, I even have that card here someplace. I converted it 6.6 pounds. Pardon? Yeah. And we moved to the Hill of Springs, Tel Aviv, in a suburb of Yafo, because the city was really Yafo. Tel Aviv was just starting. Well, not just, but it was building up. My father, since he arrived, was trained as an accountant and ultimately became a controller of a Jewish agency bank in Israel. He trained under the British. He was extremely, extremely thankful. He was very appreciative. He even learned English. My mother, was working in a grocery store, so I guess she was not as engaged with the British. But when I was born, and my Pidyon Haben date arrived, my father wrote a message to His Majesty the King George VI, London. May I be excused for taking the liberty to request His Majesty to be the godfather of my son, born on this glorious day, His Majesty's birthday. Signed, Yitzhak Bernard Markowitz, with our address and so on and so forth. Well, he was disappointed because he got a response. Can you imagine what was going on then in 1945? I refer to your telegram addressed to His Majesty the King, requesting that he should act as the godfather of your son, and I am to inform you that His Majesty had to make it a rule not to accept invitations of this kind, except from persons who are personally known to him. I have the honor to be, Sir, your obedient servant, and then there is an assistant, somebody, commissioner, who is responding. Why am I telling you these mices? These are things you don't hear, because people don't know what the mandate was all about. They hear about the laws against immigration. They hear about confining Jews, not allowing boats to arrive in Israel. But apparently, there is documentation, and I just shared with you something private, to indicate that that was not the case. There was a good relationship going on. Nevertheless, that was not good enough for Ben Gurion. That was not good enough for many Zionists. That was not good enough for Menachem Begin and his followers. These individuals were not going to be satisfied with courtesies and with an amiable relationship with the British. They were looking to create the greatest show on earth. In the Middle East, they were looking for the greatest show on earth. They wanted to have a state which will be an or lagoyim, a light unto the nations. They had a vision, both of them from different perspectives, of making the state of Israel the home for every Jew throughout the world, and to make Israel an exemplary model of what Jews can accomplish and what Jews can contribute to the world. Well, in the greatest show on earth, which is normally a circus, you have wild animals, clowns, jugglers, acrobats, tightrope walkers, stunt-oriented artists. Well, that's exactly what they found in the Middle East. When they showed up at the shores of Israel, Palestine at that time, they encountered around them wild animals, clowns, jugglers, acrobats, tightrope walkers, everything that you find in a circus. What they didn't find are good neighbors. And if you're going to just think back a few days, what happened over this weekend, I guess we still don't have good neighbors. Let me tell you about an episode that took place, and that is really the title of my presentation tonight. We lived in Tel Aviv. I was I was 3 years old, and you don't usually remember things that happened to you when you were 3 years old. But in a couple of minutes, you'll see why I remember what I'm sharing. I was at home, and I knew that my father was working in a bank, and he usually had his hours, and he used to come home in mid to late afternoon. And even on Fridays, when he came a little early, he still did not come home very early, like 11 o'clock or so. Well, one Friday, my father rushed in, and my mother, who was cooking for Shabbat, with me probably running between her feet, said to him, "What are you doing home so early?" And he took out of his pocket a note. And I have the note here, and I will try to share. Here it is. He took out a note, which was typewritten, and the only stationery, which was not a printed stationery, but a typewritten stationery, Minhelet Ha'am, the governing board of the people. It's dated Daled Iyar Tafshin Chet, the 4th day of Iyar, the May 13th, 1948. And it says, "We are honored to send you this invitation to a meeting of Hachrazat Ha'atzmaut. You are invited via this invitation, typewritten invitation, hand-delivered to his office, to a meeting whereby there will be a declaration of independence, which will take place on Friday, Hey Iyar, the 5th day of Iyar Tafshin Hey, B'sha'a 4 acharei hatzoraim, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, in the auditorium of the museum on Rothschild Boulevard, number 16. And now there is a P.S. We ask that you should keep this invitation besod. This is a secret. I am sharing with you a secret document. This secret document, et tochen ha'azmana, keep this as a secret, the essence of this invitation, the time and the place. you're asked to come no later than 3:30. Bechavod Rav Hamazkirut, the secretariat. My father showed this to my mother. Both of them apparently were quite excited because I remember that there was a commotion in the kitchen and they were almost dancing. And then my father turned around and addressed me, a little 3-year-old child running around in an apartment which was basically intended for 2 families, but we shared with another family. We had 1 bedroom, a shared kitchen, shared toilet, shared bathroom, and I was there, and he said to me, "Go take a shower and get dressed in your Shabbos clothes." What does it mean, Shabbos clothes? Because it said here in this invitation, Tilboshet, what should you wear to this meeting? Bigdei Chag Kehim, dark, formal wear. So my formal wear, eventually, half an hour later, was my dark blue shorts, a white shirt untucked, sandals, and I was ready. And my father looked at me and he said, "Just wait, we are going to have a celebration." And I said, "What is it?" "Secret." He said goodbye to my mother, took me by the hand, and the only thing I remember, again, I am 3 years old, is that I used to go for walks with my father on Shabbat, but my father was a leisurely person. He was not leisurely then. He was running. And I, as a little kid, had to run and faster and faster and to try to keep up with him. And we went from Rehov Wolfson by the Shuk, turned right on Rehov Aliyah, and we are moving faster, and we're crossing Rehov Levinsky, and we are crossing another street, and there are no people on the street until we got to Rehov Allenby, named for General Allenby. At that point, it was like those of you who were in Israel for Shavuot. If you go to the Kotel early in the morning, you notice that there are little streams of people coming from different little streets, and they all sort of join up into a big river of people towards the Kotel. Well, that's what happened. Little Moshe Markowitz, with his father, holding on tightly, we are joining a big river, a river of men and women, and they are all headed in the same direction. Do you ever see people all going in the same direction? And they are walking towards the Rothschild. They are going in the direction of Rothschild Boulevard. I lost my breath. My father picked me up, and he started running even faster because now he didn't have to worry about me. We got to Rothschild, and he turned left, and over there we started having a congestion of men, women, and children. And I look around, and I said to my father, I assume, Maze. And the only response I got from him was, shh, keep quiet. So I kept quiet. And we went, and we went, and we went, and about a block and a half, or close to 2 blocks further, on the left side of the street, there was a white building with steps leading down to the street, and there were, I don't know, for a little kid it looked like hundreds of people. And some of them were on the steps, some of them were on the sidewalk, some of them were across the road. My father decided, I guess, for our safety and security, because of a little child, he was going to stand on the other side of the roadway. By now, my wife even knows where it was. I remember the point that we were at. And at 4 o'clock, I guess, I didn't know, at 4 o'clock, the commotion turned into a hush. And you could have heard a pin drop. And I looked up at my father and he said, so I kept quiet. And we heard a voice from two speakers that were placed on top of the stairs on the left and on the right of the building. We heard a deep voice, which now I know to have been that of Ben-Gurion. And he apparently, I didn't know then, but I know now, was reading the Proclamation of Independence, which they promised to present. If I thought that you needed the details, and if it wasn't already 10 after 8, and I was told to get out of here by 8, I would tell you that there were many, many hours invested and argued into the composition of that document. It wasn't written with too much consensus. It was so controversial that now, I think in 2013, they opened up the archives and they showed the drafts, the corrections of the document, and they must have crossed out kimat every word twice or 3 times. Especially, what shall I say, personally important was the fact that 2 rabbis who were involved in the composition of this document were Moshe Shapira. Later on, because of his illness, you may know him as Moshe Chaim Shapira, because he was ill, he added the name Chaim. And Harav Fishman, who later on was known as Harav Maimon. And these 2 gentlemen had to fight, to do what we in America take for granted. In America, you take out your currency and you see, in God we trust. The Declaration of the State of Israel did not have any mention or reference to the word God. And they were not going to allow it to happen. So apparently, up to almost an hour or an hour and a half before the document was read to the public, there was no mention. And finally, they settled. They settled in the following way. Somebody suggested, instead of saying, the God who saved us, Goel Israel, or the God of our father, or anything like that, they referred to God as the Rock of Israel. That was a par enough reference that Ben-Gurion said, everybody can interpret it the way they want. The Rock of Israel to you means one thing, Gesundheit, to somebody else means something else, fine. He said, please, I have a request. Let's not put God up to a vote. His words in a document. Bekitsu. We are standing outside and I hear this very heavy voice projecting from these 2 microphones. I don't know what the guy is saying. And then he ends. And people were sort of holding their breath to see what's next. And it seems that Rav Fishman, who ultimately became Rav Maimon, stood up and recited Shehechianu B'Shem U'B'Malchut. When he finished, and everybody inside, and for sure all of us on the outside, answered Amen, that's how I know that I was there. Not the Amen, but the crowd burst into singing and dancing. Such singing and dancing that the 3-year-old who is holding on to his father for dear life and whose father is holding on to him so he doesn't lose him in the crowd, all of a sudden, a man who looked to me like a giant came and ripped my hand up, that's what I remember, ripped my hand out of my father's hand, put me on his shoulders, and started dancing. And what do you think I did? I started crying. I was there. I am a witness. I am reflecting to you now an atmosphere, a mood of a group of individuals who just uncontrollably were elated. They were, seventh heaven wasn't even enough. The singing and dancing went on until finally my father saved my life, took me off this guy's shoulders, and said to me, Holchim habayta. We're going home. Why? What time was it? Shabbos. The two rabbis who were in the meeting were able to convince Ben Gurion to hold the meeting early enough before Hadlakat Neirot so that there shouldn't be Chilul Shabbat. Think of the Kedusha of Medinat Israel. It was established without Chilul Shabbat, in deference and in respect to Shabbat. I know there are people who are going to disagree with me, but that's my personal feeling of that particular moment. We're going home. We reached the house. We lived on the third floor. I was totally out of breath, I remember as a little child. And my father rushes in, and you'll forgive me, he grabs my mother, gives her a big hug, and says to her, and that comes through a family legend, so I don't remember, if I was a Rav, I would tell you at candlelighting to say Shehechiyanu. But I am not a Rav, so just light the candles, let's take Shabbat. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish there were more people who would be relics like me, who were there, and who tell the story the way I am telling you or sharing with you today. Because unfortunately, when you get used to a certain reality, the excitement and the sanctity that are associated with it diminish. We have children today who don't know what the Six-Day War was about, and they cannot fathom what you and I and many others felt when we heard that Hakotel B'Yadeinu, when we heard that we have conquered ancient Yerushalayim. To these kids, L'Shana Ba'a in Yerushalayim, that we recited the Seder, is simply my gap year in Yerushalayim. Take it for granted. Of course, they have been there so many times before. And approaching the Kotel is the same experience. But let's not talk about that. Let's talk about the Declaration of Independence. That moment changed the course of Jewish history and human history, and it became the greatest show on earth. But if up to now I told you about things which are thrilling, let me tell you that nothing goes by easily. Because about a month later, when do you want to leave? I don't know. What's the story? Can I continue? So, about a month later, I remember a similar experience, but this time was in June I think 24th, on Shabbat, when my father, after lunch, told me, come, let's go for a walk. And there was nothing unusual about it, except that this walk was unusual. Our family, a religiously observant family, did not go to the beach on Shabbat. Well, that Friday, we were going to the beach. My father, again, the same route, reaches Rehov Allenby and continues straight with Rehov Allenby all the way to the beach. And when we get to the beach, there are people assembled there and police assembled there. and everybody is looking in the same direction, to the right, and not on the street, but rather to the waters. And what I saw there, my father told me, he instructed me, never, ever to forget. What I saw was a burning ship. The ship was called Altalena. Altalena was a sad chapter in the first month of the establishment of the State of Israel. It almost created a civil war between Ben-Gurion, David Ben-Gurion, and Menachem Begin. Who was right and who was wrong, I am not here to judge or to discuss. That's not the context of my conversation. But I will tell you that both had very, very good intentions. The only flaw in their intentions was that at some point, on the 20th of June, Ben-Gurion gave a command, which most of the officers who were on the beach refused to obey. Only one officer, out of duty to Ben-Gurion, pulled the trigger and bombed the boat, which was filled with Jews who were bringing weapons to the State of Israel from France, a gift from the French government, valued very, very expensive. And because of politics, because of a matter of dispute, who was going to get the weapons, the first month after the joyous day that I described to you about 5 minutes ago, that day will go down in infamy. It is a terrible experience to be a child looking out into the sea, the Yom Ha'Tichon, the Mediterranean, and see a long black boat, and the smoke, even though it was already 4 days later or 5 days later, still the smoke is going up and up and up, and you hear that there were people killed and people who were injured, people who were maimed, all with the kavanah of really, really, really creating an Or Lagoyim. I have several other episodes to share, but I just had a very precious lady point to her watch, and I have to listen to her because she's like a daughter to us. So let me finish with the following. We live today in an era where we are being tested, even right here in the United States. This is not political commentary, and this is not propaganda. We are being threatened with anti-Semitism. Everybody said so, including the ADL. And they usually don't. And we have to be concerned. The concern that we have is, if chas v'shalom, I shouldn't, what do they say? Al tiftach pe l'Satan. If, we will have to find refuge. V'yahin zolich gein. There is only one haven. And if we have amidst us people who try to defame and undermine the State of Israel, who on Tuesday or Wednesday informed the world that currently there are 9 million people who are residents of the State of Israel. 9 million. More than in the United States. I wonder if there will be a decision made, just like there was a very harsh decision about that bullet or the tank being shot towards the boat. And some of us will be told, you cannot come. You are the enemy of the state. We have to learn from the past. We have to be very, very vigilant. We have to be very careful with every word that comes out of our mouths. We have to enjoy the privilege, the gift, the miracle of the State of Israel and share it with our brethren, and hopefully, speedily in our times, or as the Lubavitcher Rebbe used to say, B'karov mamash, we will see us, all of us here, see the day when Mashiach will arrive, and all of us will find ourselves in Eretz Yisrael.
Amen.